The city of Asheville never truly slept. Even at 2:17 a.m., when the apartment windows were dark and the traffic lights blinked over empty intersections, something lingered in the air, a low electric hum beneath the concrete, a vibration too steady to be natural. Mara Ellison had worked the graveyard shift beneath Central Station for 3 weeks when she began to notice it. The control room was narrow and windowless, lit by cold fluorescent panels that flattened everything into gray. 12 security monitors covered the wall. 11 showed empty platforms and silent corridors. The 12th showed Platform 7. Platform 7 had been closed for 12 years after an alleged tunnel collapse. The reports were sealed, the blueprints revised, and the entrance welded shut. Yet every night at exactly 2:19 a.m., Camera 12 flickered to life. The lights on the abandoned platform buzzed on, and people appeared. They did not walk down the stairs. They did not enter from the tunnels. They were simply there, standing in still rows along the yellow safety line, facing the tracks as if waiting for something. Men in outdated suits, women in dresses from another decade, a little boy holding a red balloon that never moved. None of them spoke. None of them blinked. At 2:20 a.m., the sound began. A distant metallic screech rolled through the speakers in the control room, the unmistakable approach of a train. Mara checked the system logs the first time it happened. There was no scheduled arrival, no active line, no power routed to that track. Yet the rails on the screen trembled. Wind whipped through the figures' coats and hair, though nothing else in the station moved. Then headlights burst from the darkness of the tunnel, a blinding white glare that swallowed the camera feed for a fraction of a second. When the image stabilized, a train stood at the platform. Its exterior was wrong. The metal looked warped, blistered, as if it had been burned and cooled too quickly. The windows were black, reflecting nothing. The doors slid open. No conductor stepped out. No announcement echoed. The waiting figures boarded in silence, moving stiffly, almost mechanically. The child with the red balloon was the last to enter. When he turned toward the camera, his face was smooth and pale, his eyes completely black. The doors shut, the train pulled away, and as it disappeared into the tunnel, every passenger turned in unison to stare directly into the lens. The feed cut to static. At 2:21 a.m., Platform 7 was empty again. The lights snapped off. The hum faded. Mara reported the malfunction the first night. Her supervisor didn't look surprised. He told her to log it as interference and never rewind the footage. "It's residual imaging," he said flatly. "Old systems do that." But the next night, Mara watched again, and the next. On the 5th night, she saw someone she recognized, herself, standing among the waiting passengers wearing the same gray transit uniform. Her face was expressionless. Her eyes were black. When the headlights flared and the train arrived, the other Mara stepped forward first. The doors opened. She hesitated only a moment before boarding. The real Mara stumbled back from the monitors, her pulse hammering in her ears. She checked the timestamp, 2:19 a.m. She looked down at her hands to passenger on platform 7 had turned toward the camera again. They were no longer waiting for the train. They were waiting for her. The intercom crackled. A voice she had never heard before whispered through the speaker, soft and distorted. Final boarding. The door to the control room clicked behind her. It had never locked automatically before. The fluorescent lights overhead began to flicker in rhythm with the monitor. 2:20 a.m. The metallic screech grew louder. Not from the speakers this time, but from somewhere deep within the station. The walls trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The camera feed shifted as if the lens itself had tilted slightly upward. She could see more of the platform now, and at the far end of the screen, beyond the crowd of silent figures, she saw the welded security gate that supposedly sealed the staircase to platform 7. It was no longer closed. It stood wide open, darkness yawning beyond it. Something moved inside that darkness. Something tall and thin, unfolding itself slowly as though it had been compressed for years. The train burst from the tunnel again, brighter than before. The doors slid open with a shriek that seemed almost eager. The figures did not move this time. They simply stared at the camera, waiting. The intercom whispered again, "You're late." The control room door swung open behind her. A gust of freezing air rushed in, carrying the smell of rust and damp earth. Mara turned slowly. The hallway outside was no longer the tiled corridor she knew. It was a stairwell descending into shadow, lit by the sickly flicker of fluorescent lights. A yellow line ran down the center of the steps. She did not remember standing up. She did not remember walking. But suddenly she was at the top of the stairs, one hand gripping the cold metal railing. Below her, she could see platform 7. The waiting passengers stood exactly as they had on the monitor, their heads tilted upward in perfect unison. Looking at her, the tall, thin shape stood beside the open train doors now, its limbs too long, its outline blurred as if it existed half in smoke. It raised one elongated arm and pointed gently toward the entrance. The train emitted a low, resonant hum that matched the vibration she had always felt in her teeth. Step by step, Mara descended. The air grew colder, the hum grew louder. When her foot touched the platform floor, the passengers parted to make space for her. She walked past the child with the red balloon. His black eyes followed her. The doors remained open. Inside the train, the seats were filled with more figures, their faces pressed against the windows from within. The tall shape leaned closer, its featureless face inches from hers. In its reflection on the train's metal surface, she saw herself, pale, hollow-eyed, already fading. The intercom echoed one last time. "Welcome aboard." The doors slammed shut. At 2:21 a.m., the control room beneath Central Station was empty. The monitors displayed silent, vacant platforms. Camera 12 showed nothing but darkness. The next night at 2:19 a.m., the lights on platform 7 flickered back to life. The waiting passengers appeared, and among them stood a woman in a gray transit uniform. Her eyes, black as the tunnel behind her, facing the tracks as the sound of the approaching train began once more. The city of Blackridge was built on layers, old brick beneath new steel, forgotten tunnels beneath polished streets, sealed foundations beneath glittering towers. People joked that if you dug deep enough, you would find another city staring back at you. No one joked about it after the sinkholes began. The first opened on a quiet Tuesday morning, swallowing a parked car whole. There was no explosion, no warning crack in the asphalt, just a sudden yawning void and the sickening crunch of metal folding into darkness. The city blamed unstable infrastructure. The news blamed heavy rainfall. But the holes were too precise, too clean, like something had opened its mouth from below. Elena Voss, an urban surveyor assigned to inspect structural risks, was sent to document the damage. She expected fractured pipes and collapsed sewer lines. Instead, when she peered into the first sinkhole, she saw a staircase. It spiraled downward into perfect blackness, its steps smooth and deliberate, carved from stone older than the surrounding concrete. It had not been broken by the collapse. It had been revealed. The police cordoned off the area, but Elena returned that night alone. The city above was quieter after midnight, the constant traffic replaced by distant sirens and the hollow wind between buildings. She slipped beneath the barrier tape and lowered herself into the hole. The air below was cold and dry, carrying a faint metallic scent. Her flashlight beam cut through dust motes, illuminating the spiral steps. There were no markings, no graffiti, no debris. The staircase felt untouched by time. As she descended, the sounds of the city faded until there was nothing but her breathing and the soft echo of her boots. After what felt like 20 flights, the staircase opened into a corridor. The walls were lined with doors, dozens of them, each identical, smooth metal, no handles, no hinges visible, each marked with a number painted in black. 1, 2, 3. The numbers continued far into the distance. She approached door 17 at random and pressed her hand against it. It was warm, not like metal warmed by sunlight, warm like skin. She jerked her hand back. A low vibration traveled through the corridor, subtle but unmistakable. It felt like something shifting behind the doors, breathing behind them. Then she heard it. A knock, not from the door she touched, from every door at once. A soft, synchronized tapping, as though dozens of knuckles rapped politely from the other side. She stepped back, her flashlight trembling in her grip. The knocking grew louder, more urgent. The metal doors began to bulge outward slightly, warping under pressure from within. The numbers painted on them seemed to pulse, the black ink darkening and spreading like spilled oil. Elena turned and ran toward the staircase, but it was gone. In its place stood another door, larger than the rest, unnumbered. It had a handle, and it was slowly turning. The knocking stopped instantly. The silence that followed was suffocating. The large door creaked open by a fraction, revealing a thin slice of darkness inside. From that darkness came the faint glow of city lights. Headlights, neon signs, illuminated windows. She realized with a growing horror that that she was looking at Blackridge, but not from below. From behind, the city she saw was wrong. The buildings leaned at impossible angles. The streets were empty of cars, but crowded with figures, standing shoulder to shoulder, all facing upward as if watching something high above them. Watching her. A hand shot out from the crack in the door and grabbed her wrist. The skin was cold and impossibly smooth. More hands followed, reaching through widening gaps in the metal doors along the corridor. Pale fingers clawed at the air, brushing her coat, tangling in her hair. The numbered doors burst open one by one with deafening clangs. Behind each was not a room, but a fragment of the city. An apartment bedroom, a subway platform, a hospital hallway, each empty except for a single dark figure standing motionless in the center. They began stepping forward in unison. Elena screamed and pulled against the grip on her wrist. The hand tightened. The door before her swung wider, and she saw herself standing in the distorted city beyond, staring back with hollow eyes. The version of her in that other place smiled slowly, then raised a hand in a small, patient wave. "Switch," it whispered, though its lips barely moved. The corridor floor cracked beneath Elena's feet. The walls trembled as if something vast was turning in its sleep. The hands dragged her toward the widening doorway. She dug her heels into the stone, clawing at the ground. But the surface felt soft now, pliable like packed soil. The figures from the numbered rooms stepped fully into the corridor. Their faces were featureless, smooth as mannequins, but their heads tilted curiously as they watched her struggle. The other Elena stepped closer from within the distorted cityscape. "It's your turn," it said gently. With a final violent yank, the hands pulled her through the doorway. The corridor vanished. The staircase vanished. The sinkhole in the street sealed itself silently before dawn. The next morning, city officials announced that structural repairs had been completed overnight. The asphalt was smooth and unbroken. Elena Voss returned to work at 9 a.m. sharp. She smiled at her colleagues. She reviewed safety reports. She signed off on a statement claiming that the sinkhole had been caused by natural erosion. No one noticed that she no longer blinked as often. No one noticed that when she stood near storm drains or subway grates, she sometimes tilted her head slightly, as if listening. Weeks later, another sinkhole opened across town. Clean, precise, waiting. The second sinkhole opened beneath a crowded intersection at rush hour. Traffic screamed to a halt as the asphalt folded inward like paper, revealing the same spiraling staircase descending into blackness. This time, dozens of people saw it before the authorities sealed the perimeter. Videos flooded social media for exactly 11 minutes before they were removed for public safety concerns. By noon, concrete barricades surrounded the site. By evening, the staircase was officially declared a fractured sewer shaft. By midnight, it was gone. But beneath the city of Blackridge, something had shifted. Elena felt it the moment the hole appeared. chest, slow and steady, like a second heartbeat that did not belong to her. She stood at her office window 20 floors above the street and watched the emergency vehicles swarm. The distorted reflection of the skyline shimmered faintly in the glass beside her, buildings leaning ever so slightly, as though gravity worked differently in that mirrored world. She blinked, and it was normal again. She no longer needed to descend the staircase physically. At night, when she closed her eyes, she stood once more in the corridor of numbered doors. They were all open now. The fragments of the city behind them had grown clearer, more detailed. She saw kitchens where families ate dinner, unaware that something watched from the corner where the light did not reach. She saw hospital rooms where patients slept, while featureless figures stood beside their beds, tilting their smooth heads in patient observation. She saw subway cars stalled between stations, their passengers frozen mid-motion, as though time there had thinned to a fragile film. And at the end of the corridor stood the unnumbered door, wide open. Through it, the other Blackridge pulsed with activity. The sky there churned in slow spirals of gray and violet. The streets were filled with those hollow figures now, shoulder to shoulder, all facing upward,